Hi everyone, and welcome to How Our Garden Grows. In this video, I'm going to show you how to plant tomatoes from seed. And seed starting from tomatoes is actually very easy. And it's about as easy as peppers. They grow a little bit faster than peppers. So I would highly recommend peppers are a little bit more in the 8 to 10 week range to get them ready before your last frost. This is a little bit more 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. They may germinate a little slowly. They may kind of sit there a little bit and take a while to get established. But once they take off, they really take off. And I'll give you an example here of one of the varieties that does really well in my area. This is a determinate variety, which means it sets fruit really quickly and starts producing, and then it tends to die off. But some of these are a little bit more semi-determinate. They may continue to produce for you. So these were sown early in my area. You can see 210, and right now we're on 3.7. So it hasn't even been a full month, and these are already ready to be split up and transplanted, which I am going to create another video on this of exactly how I separate these. So you can separate 4 different plants. I've done it in 1 cup. You all probably know by now if you've been following me, I like to use the styrofoam cups to get a little bit more depth in here than you do with these seed cells. And you also are able, since you're able to split them up, you get more tomatoes in a smaller space. So obviously when we plot these up, I start running out of room, which is the reason I have so many grow lights. So great. So let's kind of look at my station here. Notice it's quite a bit dirty right now. I should probably clean it, but I've been doing so much seed starting, and I've emphasized this before. Make sure that if you're indoors, get yourself a nice amount of space here. Make sure that you get a towel. I'd highly recommend an older towel that you can place in the area so that you can catch some of the spill, because this can get quite messy when you're seed starting quite a bit. So just make sure that you take care of your space, and so this is a good way to do that. All right, so let's get started. I'm using some examples here. I'll probably post some more tomato videos because there are so many different varieties and so many different things you can do with a lot of the dwarf varieties nowadays, the determinants, the indeterminants that just get huge and they keep growing and producing. So there's so much about tomatoes that I want to do, but we're going to start with the early varieties. Now, it's still way too cold where I'm at. It's 30 degrees right now, I believe. I don't think we're going to get much warmer than that today. So this is way too early to be placing any sort of tomato seeds outdoors. It's not even in the question right now. Some of you may have warmer zones where you can direct sow, or you can seed start outdoors in cells like these, and then you can let them germinate naturally outside. Well, so these are, notice how all of these are determinate style tomatoes, right? And you can look at the maturity date. Now, I will caution, you see 57, 55 days, 55 to 65 days. So maturity of the plants doesn't always mean to harvest. And B, it also doesn't mean from seed start. Remember, it could take anywhere between 7 and 14 days for a lot of these tomatoes to actually sprout. So a lot of that depends on how warm your soil conditions are indoors. If you keep your house at about 70 degrees in the wintertime, they're probably going to germinate a lot quicker than if you keep the temperature in the winter a little lower. So that's a good kind of basis to go on germination. And I mentioned that in my pepper video as well. So, all right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do these varieties because they're going to mature a lot sooner. The other thing I'm going to tell you, so these aren't quite prop plants. 210, you might ask, why am I sowing these seeds 3.7? And I'm telling you, it's still a little bit early in my area for transplant, and I sowed these on 210. Well, I have some varieties that I'm going to pot up several different times, probably 3 or 4 different times. And so these aren't necessarily prop plants, but I'm trying to get a really strong root system at the bottom. And that's really, really important for tomatoes. That's why you might have heard, you trim off some of the leaves to the stem, and you have a giant stem, and you just plant the entire stem about a foot deep into the earth. So that's what I did last year. I had a few plants that I was transplanting, and these were mostly indeterminate tomatoes, but I was transplanting them a whole lot earlier, and it was 2 to 3 feet tall. So I was able to get blossoms earlier. I was able to try to force it in our short growing season here in Colorado. All right, with that ramble over, let's go ahead and get to planting. All right, so planting, here we go. So I've got holes marked here, 1/4 of an inch deep for all tomatoes. So that's definitely what I'd recommend. I have the seeds here. All tomato seeds look the same, and nearly all tomato seeds or plants look the exact same as well. There's a few varieties that I'll feature that are really cool. The silvery fir, for example, kind of looks more or less like it might be a holiday tree, and very ornamental. If you're really into ornamental, I want to do a series this year on ornamental looking vegetable varieties, because I think a lot of vegetable plants get a knock for not being attractive in the garden, and I actually personally disagree. I think the vegetable garden can be a beautiful thing, and I think there's a lot of new colorful varieties out there that can add some pop and some contrast, especially if you wanted to mix some flowers and flower beds in there. So definitely something to give a try. But going to tomatoes here, we've got the seeds. So make sure that you label just like I have here. So I've got the early girl right here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to pop 2 seeds in each cell. I'm gonna pop one in there and one in there. Great. And one there, one in there. And then we'll do the remaining 2. And I will go ahead and say it again, but I don't need to show it, because if you follow me on my cool season vegetables, you already know I'm gonna say pre-moisten the soil, pre-moisten soil, and pack it in there. So you want a nice firm seed starting base, and that's all there is to it. Cover it up, go ahead and water it in. And then for the seed cells, you want to make sure you water from the bottom in a tray. So a lot of these cells, they'll either come with a tray, or you'll see a tray next to it. You can do, if you're outside, these seed starting trays may have holes in the bottom. That's really good if you get a lot of rain or moisture, so that these cells aren't just sitting in water and you drown the plant. So you don't want that. But if you're watering inside, it's a great way for you to be able to water from the bottom. There are holes in the bottom. The water will wick up into the starting mix, and it will stay moist. So that's about it right there. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and wait 7 to 14 days on average. These will be set under grow lights, and I've talked a little bit about grow lights. And what you really want for tomatoes is you don't want them to be really tall and spindly. These are pretty good right here. Look at how nice and stocky they are. When they get spindly, it's where they kind of grow really tall, and then they just flop over before they start producing these true leaves. So these are the juvenile leaves here, and these back here are the true leaves. So you want to make sure that you have enough light. I usually recommend, I'll start the lights higher. I'll do more, at least 18 hours a day. Some do up to 24 hours until they break the surface, and then they'll cut back on the lighting to about, anywhere between 12, 16 hours a day, to make sure that they just kind of get going. So that's about it. And so we'll go ahead and sow the rest of these. I won't necessarily do that on camera, but just keep them watered. You can start at this point. I would probably say that these are due for a water-soluble fertilizer. So you can go ahead and do that. And go ahead and just keep them tended to until they're ready to be transplanted. So that's about it for this video on seed starting tomatoes. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe, and go ahead and follow me so that we can show you how to pot these up, pot these into larger containers, which I'll be moving to these styrofoam containers, and then later into smaller, more nursery-like containers so that they can go in and out, get hardened off, and ready to reach their final home in their final pot. So thanks again for watching, and check out our other YouTube videos. Thanks again. Hi everyone, and welcome to How Our Garden Grows. In this video, I'm going to show you how to transplant and basically pot up some existing tomato seedlings that I sowed on 2/10 of this year. It is now 3/7 into a larger container. And I'm going to do one per these large containers. So basically, these plants are not going to compete with each other. It's going to have a new environment where it can continue to grow and get larger until I'm able to transplant it either into the garden, or in my case, since I'm doing a special treatment of these plants, I'll be transplanting it up 1 or 2 more times into even larger nursery containers, moving them in and out until they're finally ready to go and be planted in their final location. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that I'm able to, because I container garden, I'm able to get produce to the table a lot quicker. It is 30 degrees outside and not going to get any warmer today. So, and the future temperature outlook is not that great. So basically, this is the way that I can get a jump start on the season. And if there is any particular frost, I can always just move these indoors or into a sheltered location. So it's all fine. So let's go ahead and get to it. So this container is pre-filled a little bit, and might have pre-filled it too much, but we'll kind of see what happens. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. And then your seed starts, you also want some additional pre-moistened seed starting mix. I always do mine in this tote here. For those of you following me, you'll notice. Now I'm going to try to one-hand this just because of skills, and I don't have any other way to do this, so I might have to cut this in. But I really want to show this as much as possible. So you're going to really just kind of be gentle, but you're going to kind of break this up. This is another reason I like these cups. They're very forgiving. You can be very gentle with your plants, and I didn't want to send them tumbling over, but that's totally fine. And this mix is coming apart pretty well. So that just means that we don't have, you know, a super big root system yet, which is actually, for me, very, very, very nice at this point, because you don't really want the roots to get so bound that you're tearing them apart. So that is the best thing that I can stress to you. When you see them kind of more or less fall apart, look at how easy that was. And you can see the root system is still very nice. And now I can easily pot these up. So since I wasn't expecting that, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more soil to my mix. Sometimes when the roots are so bound, you're going to get this, you know, more or less a block underneath. And I may have some future videos where I feature that because I get a little bit behind, or something else happens, you know, to where it just grows a little faster than I anticipated. So this is actually perfect. I am super happy with this result. So now I'm just going to place this little guy in here right now. So there he is. We're going to be all nice and gentle with him. And then we're going to, again, me trying to kind of one-hand this here and keep it in the shot, I'm going to just sort of fill in the soil around this guy. I'm going to try to keep him upright. Again, you'll have 2 hands. I only have 1. And you're just going to pack it in neatly around the tomato. And it's just as easy as that, right? So just like that. Now, if you noticed, oh, it's probably a little too deep, right? Because you kind of see how much room I have. Well, I could have added more soil, right? Well, no fear with tomatoes. In fact, this is an advantage because I'm going to continue filling around. The thing about tomatoes is they're a vining crop. So what happens is when the vine makes contact with moisture, or in this case, the wet soil, it'll start to send out roots. And if you ever looked at a tomato plant closely and see these white nubby things at the bottom, at the base of the stem, that is the tomato getting ready to send roots out so that it can send more surface roots in contact and grab more nutrients, essentially. Tomatoes love to suck the life out of all of your soil. So they definitely are heavy feeders during the regular season, especially when they start to take off. So they're going to look at the maximum ways to pick up as many nutrients as they can. So look at that. This little guy is going to be so happy now. And I did label. This is the way I label them. So Early Girl, that's the variety, does really well in our area. And I sowed this originally, the seed, on 210. And I have the little hyphen here and then a 3-7 for the date that I transplanted him up. And so there'll be most likely a third date here if I'm going to grow him even bigger before actually transplanting into the garden or his final location. So that's about it, everyone. What I like to do is when I transplant these up, I'll immediately hit it with a water-soluble fertilizer, just because there could potentially be a little bit of transplant shock. It doesn't always happen. In my experience, this is a very, very effective way to do it. So hit with a little bit of water-soluble fertilizer, and then go ahead and just get it back under grow lights. And that's about it for transplanting or potting up any sort of tomato plant. So please like and subscribe, and go ahead and comment if you have any questions. Definitely, we'd like to see more comments. And check out our other YouTube videos. We'll be posting more and more, especially as the season starts to ramp up as we get closer to spring. All right, thanks again for watching.